y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to the shop. Today we are marinated, we're going to be having
That's all, folks.
a router plane. If you don't have everything you need for it right now, not a problem. This will be completely recorded, so you can come back and follow along anytime. We're going to be making the whole thing live today, as long as disaster doesn't strike, and we'll be having a lot of fun with it. First, I have to say my wife and I are a little bit dazed. We got back late last night from a trip, and so we were still slightly...
He loves you more than he loves me.
Yes, I schedule an early morning live the day we get back, so this is going to be interesting to see about that. So I'm going to go through some of the things you're going to need. I'm using this as a piece of hard maple. It is 1 inch thick by 3.5 inches thick.
Oh, they can barely hear you.
What's that?
Oh, yours is turned kind of down.
You got it?
Hopefully. Let us know if that didn't fix it.
Cool. Make sure I'm still on because I have to change my batteries. Yep, still on.
Oh, excuse me.
So, I'm out. I'm going to check the morning work. So, sure that's on. Yeah, okay, it's all good. So lengthwise, it depends on how wide you want your plane to be. Usually about 8 inches or so. That's the average router plane. I'm going to make mine a good bit larger because I'm actually going to make mine for tenons. And rather than it being in the middle, I'm actually going to be basically having the router over here and then a longer arm that comes off. So one side is going to be much longer than the other. So I can use that to reference on the main board and then clean off the tenons. So are you still looking good over there?
No, they said they still can't hear you. I just turned you all the way up.
Let me go make sure on that and check up on things. You gotta love lives.
Are they? I didn't stand up to check those.
Oh! My cable came unplugged when I changed the battery on that.
Oh, well now they should
Let's
be.
try this. That should be a lot better. Yeah.
I just
bring that over there.
Okay.
Okay. Might help if I actually plug it back in. I did my audio check, and then come to find out I had a battery low. So in order to change the batteries, I had to unplug it, and I forgot to replug it. So this might be a little bit better. So hopefully you can hear me now.
Can you hear me now?
So, hard maple, whatever wood you want, it really doesn't matter that much. Something that's stable. You're not worrying about wearing it out. So if you go with something softer, it's not a huge issue. Though generally, the harder, the more durable it's going to be. I have 3.5 inches by 1 inch, and lengthwise is whatever you want it to be. An average router is around 8 inches or so long. I'm going to be making mine a good bit longer because I want it to be referencing for doing tenons.
Okay, can you go back and... Whoa, my screen just...
Yes, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going back and talking through things. Yes, as to hardware, I have a list of that down below. The iron that I have for this one actually has a square shaft, and that will make this a little bit easier for creating the recess into the body. Some of the original, well, all of the original Stanleys, the Veritas, and some of the other ones actually have a diamond shape rather than a square shape. That works perfectly fine. You just have to make a different groove that it fits into. And I like this one for cost's sake. Unfortunately, I announced this, and Rockler for some reason then sold out of them. So you might have to wait a little while to get another one. But basically, any iron will work fine. Just has a different profile. It has to have a different slot that it fits into.
Well, would you give them a heads up next time what you're planning on doing so they could... No.
I did.
Rockler.
Oh, yeah, Rockler.
Not
the other thing we're going to need is we're going to make this adjustable. So we're going to need a screw, and I am using 1/4 20, all thread here, and then a nut. And this is a thumb screw that needs to then fit into the slot. So we can use this to adjust the cutter up and down. And I have links to the exact ones that I'm using in there. Then we also need a U-bolt, and it's a smaller U-bolt that fits this. Rather than using the normal eye-bolt to pull it back, the problem with an eye-bolt is if you pull it back, the bolt is directly behind the shaft, and that's where we want this adjuster to be. So in order to have the adjuster in there, we need a U-bolt to then come around and grab it that way. Something like that.
Okay. Are you going to stay on that camera for a while?
What's
No?
that?
Okay. It was just getting fuzzy.
Oh, so I'm moving back. Sorry. So there's the hardware we're going to need. Let's actually jump into making this. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this scrap of hardwood. When it comes down to the sizes on this, size just doesn't matter. Whatever you want it to be, whatever size you want it to be, there is no best or perfect fit. There are routers that are tiny and there are routers that are huge. This one is going to be off center and long. Every one of them is a little bit different. So,
Just like you. I'm going to be slapping at
yes,
you
it
today.
is. Yes.
I'm sorry. You got me
You
a
tell she just came back from vacation. Off center and long. Thanks, babe.
That's going to be your next t-shirt.
Yes. So I'm going to cut this to length, and I want mine to be about that long. I'm not going to measure this. Doesn't matter what the measurement is. I'm just going to put it on there. It looks like 14 inches-ish. And I'm going to put a mark on here. And I am actually marking how wide my router is going to be. So if you want a regular router, it's around 8-10 inches or so. And then we're going to cut it off. So if anyone has questions, go ahead and throw those in there, and we will address them as we come along.
We'll say good morning questions. How are you?
What's that?
Nothing. I was addressing the questions.
Yes.
I told you it's going to be a long morning. I don't get paid anymore being here an hour later.
So, one of the fun things about these live builds is you get to see the reality of how long things really take rather than just having the clips. You don't actually get to see the normal length of going to the table and catching the saw. So I'm going to start on the far side of the cut. Actually, I'm going to bring this in
Ooh,
so you guys can see this a little better. So I'm going to start far side of the cut. I'm going to bring it back across.
Alan wants to know how wide he sees toe.
Mine's
What?
3.5 inches here.
Okay.
Now when I cut down, I didn't draw a line on this side to follow. I'm just going to look at the reflection in the saw plate, and you'll actually see the other board going up and going down, and I'm just going to go until it looks, from my point of view, like the board continues on the other side. That lets me know I'm cutting vertical. The microphone's going down, so you're probably hearing whack, whack, whack. Let me fix that. Ta-da! Look, it's a router plane. I love early mornings. Now, the next thing we need to make is a back that will go on this, and that is what the iron will actually sit into. Now, there's no reason for that back to go all the way along the whole back of the plane. It just needs to be where the router's at. So I want it large enough so that my U-bolt will fit through it, but I don't need it too much larger than that. So I'm going to bring this camera over. Was going to wake my daughter up to come do this, but she's still sleeping for some reason.
Oh, she's awake now.
Oh, she's awake now? Oh,
Yeah,
maybe she'll come down a little ways.
You kind of forgot to have a little tooth fairy visit, too.
Well, yeah, I fell asleep before she did, probably. Okay.
Don't tell her.
So I need to have the U-bolt.
Okay, we have a question before you go on.
Okay, what's
Alex wants to know any reason to make it 2 inches thick.
that? Any reason to make it 2 inches thick?
Yeah. I don't know, I'm just reading the question.
I don't know what you mean.
Alex,
Mine's
clarify.
1 inch thick. If you have 3/4, it's perfectly fine. Just if you're doing the back, you're going to need to make your recess a little bit smaller.
Maybe that's all he has.
Let me move this out here. There. Okay, so I've got my U-bolt on here, and I want to see how long I want this back to be. And I want enough material on there to hold this, so I'm going to go something like that. And I'm going to eyeball let's make it about that long. So like 2.5, 3 inches-ish, something like that.
Yeah, he has a 2-inch board. That's why he's asking.
Oh, 2 inch thick?
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's 2 inch thick, you're going to have to do a little bit more carving work to get down in there, but it works perfectly fine.
So Susan Morrison wants to know, why aren't you using your new shooting board?
Because I don't care if it's square. I'm not joining this to anything, so the only reason to use a shooting board is if you want this to be perfectly square for joinery or something of that nature. And it doesn't matter that it's square or not, because I'm actually going to be shaping and organizing and making this organic. Yep, got that. All right, so then the next thing I need is to cut this down. And so what we're going to actually create is a little rectangular block here. And that is going to then glue on to the back of this for the iron to rest on. So the other thing I need to find out is how tall do I want it to be. And in this case, if my router sticks down that far and my head is on there, I'm just going to play this all together and see how it comes. And this is the way I normally do my design work. I don't worry about anything specific. But if I do want it to come up all the way, I need it to be up here. But if I want it to come down, so I need enough space for the bolts to go on. Let's go ahead and make it 1 inch by 1 inch. And then we'll play with it there, because we can always make it shorter with a router, with a plane. Oh my, my wood just jammed. So I'm going to set this at 1 inch. Not being anything specific, doesn't really matter. And I'm going to put it on here and go mark.
Okay.
Mark. And mark.
Joel just joined us, and I was half paying attention when you were talking earlier. What kind of wood are you using?
This is hard maple.
It is hard maple. Okay.
Yeah. The actual type of
I'm
wood
going to
for
write that
router
down
plane,
in case I get that question.
the actual type of plane or the type of wood really doesn't matter. It's not. You don't need a really hard, dense wood for this, so it makes it a little bit better. It might wear out a little bit slower, but router planes don't wear out that much. You have to do a lot of work with them for them to wear out. So let's cut this out. So this is going to be a block about 1 inch by 1 inch by about 2.5, 3 inches long-ish. And we're going to cut down.
How does that convert to metric?
Let's see. If it's 2.5 inches, that would make it 5.
I was just teasing you.
6. So around 7 centimeters long, right?
Well,
something like that.
Melody told us 4 inches is roughly 10 centimeters. So
Yes. So I'm cutting down until I meet that line. Set this on here. And so at that line, then we're going to turn the board, put it vertical in the cut, and we're going to rip it down with a tenon saw. Tenon saw is a rip cut saw with a deeper throat. Just like that. That's all we need.
that's all we need.
Little block. Okay, now we need to attach this little block to this big block to make our block. I cracked myself up. Nobody else but me. Now, normally, I would use a wood glue or a hide glue or something of that case. But due to time constraints and doing this live, we're going to be using epoxy. And it'll work perfectly fine for the long term. 5-minute epoxy isn't the strongest for this, but it will allow me to make it today while we're live. So I'm going to get some tape here, put it out flat on the bench, and this will allow me to mix some epoxy on here. Now we have to figure out...
So is that your mixtape?
Yes.
only works on a certain generation.
We grab a mixing stick, just some scrap on the floor, and we're going to pour out a little bit of this. Now, the other nice thing about epoxy is usually you have a good bit of open time, but with 5-minute epoxy, not so much. So, before we actually go in mixing this, we're going to figure out where we want this. Normally, you want this to be in the middle of your router plane, but I'm making a 10-in router plane, so I'm going to move it down to something around here, about 1.5 inches or so from the end. Doesn't really matter where it's at. I'm just going to look at my proportions, make sure this is where I want it to be. Yeah, something like that. There and there. Cool. So I'm going to put it on here around that distance in. I don't care exactly where it's at. We're just going to put this on here. Mix up a bit. Always put the cap back on. Where is it? There it is. And mixy, mixy, mixy. Now, the biggest problem with epoxy is that people never mix it enough. And especially with these fast-acting epoxies, you want to make sure you mix them enough. So normally I would think that's right about there. It should be enough. And as soon as I start thinking, yeah, it should be enough, I think I'm about halfway.
Okay.
You keep going.
Alan wants to know, what size was your block?
It's about 1 inch by 1 inch by about 2 inches long. About 2.5 inches long.
Okay. There you go, Alan.
The actual size of it really doesn't matter that much. Just as long as it's efficient and you make it bigger than it needs to be, then you can always plane it down to something smaller, which we'll probably end up doing. Just keep going, drag in the stuff from the outside, and that should be enough. Okay, so make sure I'm where I want to be, there and there. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to use my mixing stick to apply it on here. Make sure I get it on all surfaces. And then I'm going to put it on here. If I had a little salt, I probably would use it now. It just stops it from sliding around. Now I'm not worrying about the squeeze out because we'll be doing a bit of carving and making this look a little prettier later on. I'm going to grab some hand screws and clamp this down on. Now I want to make sure, because I'm going to be drilling that way, so I'm going to want to clamp it this way. Oop. Just slide it over the bench. Open that up. And the 5-minute is not how long it takes to set. That is how much working time you have. So effectively, from the time you start mixing until it starts to set up and tack up and not be as useful, you have about 5 minutes. Though there's a bit of a leeway on there. Move! I clamped it too much already. Just lining it up so it's flush with the back of the board. And I'm going to plane it down a little bit, so I don't need it to be perfect. Just need to be close enough. And the clamps aren't there to clamp it down like you would with PVA. PVAs need a lot of clamping force. Epoxies do not need clamping force. As a matter of fact, if you squeeze it out, you'll actually weaken the joint a bit. And when I mean squeeze it out, I mean like 200 pounds pressure. All the epoxy needs is something to hold it in place until it sets. So,
okay. So I have 2 questions coming up.
What's that?
So Benjamin Siemens asked, West system, Does that mean anything to you?
No, I'm using Total Boat High Performance. West System would work perfectly fine. No, I'm not using. I'm using JB Weld 5 minute.
Oh, it's a brand.
Because it's a 5 minute epoxy. But yeah, West System will work fine. It's just going to take longer. I don't know if West System makes a 5 minute. But to do it live, I need 5 minute.
All right, and then Laura wants to know, how long will a tube of 5 minute epoxy last after opening?
A year or more, as long as you don't mix the tips together, several years. Usually mine lasts me about a year or so because that's when I use them all. Actually, in 5 minute epoxy tubes, I usually use them every 3 or 4 months. I'll get a new one because I've run out of it. But yeah, as long as you're careful not to let the hardener touch the resin or vice versa, they'll last years. I have a friend with West System epoxy. He's been working on a couple bottles for over 10 years. Okay, now while this is in here, we're going to start doing work on some of the other items while this all sets up. First thing I want to do is drill the big hole that the blade goes down through. So we need a hole so that the blade can go down through the bed and we can see where the blade is cutting. So for that, I'm going to be using an 1.5" auger bit, though something around 1.5", 2 inches is just an easy way to do it. If you don't care about it being a closed hole, you can actually make it an open hole like the Stanley 71. Let me show you this. So on the Stanley 71, it's open here, and then there's this foot that you can put in there to actually close the hole on it. Here, bring that up there. And so you could drill this with a closed hole, or you could remove the foot and cut down here and cut down here and then cut out. So you'd have this open hole, which makes it easier to see things. But in this case, I want to drill the closed hole because I want to have this reference surface on the other side. If that makes sense. I think I just kind of muffed up how I talked through it. So I'm going to be using an 1.5" auger bit. So, any questions? No? Put this in here and make sure everything is the way I want it to be. Make sure that the vise is screaming, and move the clamps around to get them out of the way. And then we're going to figure out where exactly we want this hole to be. Man, cameras take so much time to set up. So we're going to drill a hole here. And I'm not going to worry about putting it anywhere. I'm going to eyeball it being in the center of this block. So I'm going to put it up against the wall here. And I want it to be, let's go right about there. And if I cut into that block a little ways, that's not an issue at all, because I'm going to be cleaning that out here in a bit once we actually create a hole for the router to go in. Now, if I'm drilling this hole closer to the end, I might want to put a clamp across here, because that lead screw is basically a big wedge, and if it's too close to the end, it's going to split out the end of this unless this is clamped together. But I'm far enough in that I'm not going to worry about that. Yay, 1.5" hole. Here, I'm going to throw my large swing on this. Maybe. So this is my regular brace. And then I've got this one with a longer swing. And if you don't have an auger bit, you can use a hole saw. I've done a couple videos showing using hole saws to do it, or spade bits. Hole saws work, they just take a lot longer. Spade bits work, they're just not quite as clean. Let's actually clamp it. With a longer swing on here, it's a lot easier. Go until I feel the tip on the other side. There it is. And once we feel the tip on the other side, back it out.
Can I throw a question your way?
Yep, what you got?
Peter Wall wants to know why glue on a piece instead of using a thicker block of wood. Which one is stronger?
A thicker block of wood, well, actually, I'll talk about that here in a moment, because when you make it thicker, you just have to do more stock removal, and it gets annoying. And strength really doesn't matter in this case. There isn't going to be enough force on there to cause any problem at all. So we come at it from the other side, so we get a good entry and exit hole. Nice and clean. There we go. Happy. Yeah, let me actually talk about that for a moment, because I've had a few questions about that. The thing is, when you're working with a router plane, you want to have the space in front of the iron that you can see. And so if you make it all 2 inches thick, it gets harder to see down in there. Now you can. It's also going to be harder to put the hardware in because you have to get this in from the front, and you have to do a lot more work to chisel that out. And basically what you end up doing is then carving out a stepped shape in the front of the router, which is completely doable. But in the case like this, where I want it to be way out here on the end, it would be a whole lot of stock removal that really wouldn't be worth anything to remove all of this extra stock rather than just gluing on a piece. And gluing on a piece is not going to make this any weaker. The glue is going to be far, far, far stronger than the wood. If it breaks, the wood is going to break long before the glue will. So it's not going to make any difference that way. Yeah, it's not something to worry about, and it's a lot less work to just glue a block on there.
Okay.
What's that?
Your auger bit. Wood owl?
Wood owl, yes.
Wood owl.
Grab a rag, I'm dripping a bit of glue. Yay, shop rags. Got a little bit of squeeze out I want to clean up. Now it's starting to really tack up. Okay, so while this is all setting, we're going to do some of the work to then fit the iron in. Now what we need to do is create a channel that will actually house this router bit. We want it to hold it so that this doesn't turn and twist. With a standard Stanley, make sure I'm in focus here. With the standard Stanley, pull this out. Now, you've got this V-groove in here that the diamond shape fits into. And those work phenomenal. This is just a little bit harder to make. You can come in with a V-tool and then shape it out and then square it back. But to get a nice fit on there, it's just a little bit more work on there. Whereas with a square shaft, it's going to be fairly easy just to create that square profile for this to fit in and house down in. So what we need to do is cut in the side of the block, cut down one side, cut down the other side, and then come with a chisel and remove everything to get that square groove. So, I need to find out how thick is this. I didn't measure that. I was assuming a ½ inch. It is not. It is 375. That is 3/8. You gotta love Imperial System. 375. 3/8. Yeah, good. My brain was thinking right. So I need a 3/8 inch wide groove, or 0.375 inches. Or some number in metric. So what we're going to do is to cut that groove, we need to cut down one wall and then cut down the other and then come in and remove the rest with chisel. The problem is we have this closed hole that we need to cut down in, and how do you get down in there? There's a couple different ways of doing it. Number one, we could use the turning saw. This is the live video we did a few months ago. That would work great. We could use a coping saw or a fret saw. We could use a keyhole saw. Come on, out of there. A keyhole saw. And these are a lot of fun. I may actually end up using this. And so we're going to do a little bit with both of them. Or the coping saw, the bow saw and a keyhole saw. There's a reason I edited out a lot of things for most of the standard videos. So we need to reach in there and we need to cut one side out, and then we need to measure over 3/8 and cut the other side out. And being in that hole is kind of difficult. Everything is tight in there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to put, actually, let me clamp it in here and show you guys a little closer what it actually looks like. Focus on that. Come on. There you go. So I've got this hole in here. We need to cut the slot for that to fit back into there. So I'm going to grab my knife and this, and I'm going to put a mark right there. And I'm just eyeballing where it is. If it's ever so slightly off one side or the other, that's not a problem. I want it to be there. Then, let's grab this one. I'll put this on here. Actually, let me extend this one down a little bit. So, let's extend it down to there. Put my knife into that line. Draw it down to there. So there's the line I want to cut on. So to do that, I'll grab my swing out seat here. And we're going to take apart, I'm going to take apart my saw. I need to add a little more weight to the bench now that I have, come on. Okay, cool. Loosen this up, drop pieces on the floor. Because if I swing the swing out seat all the way out, it's actually enough that I tip the bench. Ooh, maybe I could actually lose weight instead of adding weight to the bench. Ah, where's the fun in that? So we're going to open this up. We're going to put the blade through this. Clamp the blade back into here. These are always fiddly to put back together.
You're black.
I'm black? Oh, I hit the wrong button. There, is that better?
Yes.
So let's put this back together. There we go. And then I can put the string back in the hole. And tighten this one up. Be another benefit to making this an open hole is that there would be extra space in there. And now I can put this on that line and we can cut in. A vertical groove right there. And I'm going to go back a little ways. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to find out exactly how far back I want to go.
That was
I
like
need to. What's that?
I was going to ask you about that.
Well, I know I need to go back in farther than that. So what we've got, move this over here, is the U-bolt and the iron. So the iron is going to be running vertical like this. The U-bolt is going to be on there. And so I need it to have enough space so that these nuts can actually still grab on over here. So I'm going to set the nuts right up flush on the edge. Put the U-bolt on there. And I really need to come back in that far. Wow. So I should have made that back a little bit thinner. But that is fine. So I need to come to right there. So we're about a 1/2 inch or so. Let's see. How far away are we actually? We are at 5'5", so just over a 1/2 inch away from the back. So that means I need to go into this block a whole 1/2 inch, so that it will house in there. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to move this back a little farther. Let's clamp back so I have a little bit more space. Again, the clamps aren't here actually clamping it in place, they're just stopping this block from moving around while I'm working on it. Oops, let me show you. There we go. So I'm just going to back these two clamps up a little bit so I have a little bit more working space here. And I occasionally get asked why this clamp has a hole in it, and that is so that I can clamp medallions in place on saws, and then I can reach in through here and remove these screws. So this holds the medallion from turning, the nut, and then I can pull the bolt out on the saw handle. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to, oh, that's not good. Badness, badness. All right, we're going to have to come in this way then. That's not what I want. So let's slide you over here. The back was tipping on me, which meant it wasn't setting right yet. Let me clean this out along here. I was debating whether or not to glue this on ahead of time, but then made the choice not to. So we need to come in a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to set my marking gauge at, my calipers at a 1/2 inch, and I'm going to use them as a marking gauge. So I need to come into there, and I need to come into there. Just two little dimples that I can see. And now we can cut back to those dimples. Oop. Let's actually get down into a good stance for it. Right into there. Now for the other one, I'm actually going to use the keyhole saw because I want to experiment with it and see which one I like better. So one of the fun things about woodworking, there's no right way to do it, and sometimes it's fun to try multiple ways so you can see what you enjoy better, because you never know if you're going to like it or enjoy it until you get a chance to try it. Any questions? Sigh.
Sorry, I was...
Sigh not so, lady. Sigh not so. Men were deceivers ever.
They want to know, are you eyeballing the center to cut the groove, and is there a way to make sure the groove is centered?
I was just eyeballing when I put the iron on there to mark it. And there really isn't a reason to make it dead center other than aesthetics. Now what I need to do is I need to put the iron in there. I need to mark the other side. So I'm going to set the iron back in the slot. I'm going to put it right on the outside of that. Bring the knife over and mark the other side of the slot. Then we need to loosen this up, slide it over, and let's mark where that one's at. So it needs to be right there. And this slot does not need to be perfectly tight. It can be somewhat loose and still have perfectly functioning. So now we're going to use the keyhole saw. I can put this in here. I want to make sure I cut on the correct side of the line. Actually, I'm going to come at it from underneath because it'll be a little more comfortable this way. And I'm going to start it. Keyhole saws are very aggressive, very vigorous. Oh, come on, catch. You have to be careful with them, that if you push too hard, you'll bend the blade very easily. Vigorous saw is much faster, much cleaner. I don't know if I would call it more fun, because I have to use more control. Though it is a lot easier, I don't have to put it together and take it apart and put it together and take it apart. I kind of like the keyhole saw. If I had to do it over again, 6 of one, half dozen of another.
Okay, so Douglas Jorgensen asks, are you going to have enough backing for adjusting your screw?
Enough backing for adjusting the screw?
I don't know, I'm just reading the question.
There is plenty enough space for the nuts to be on the back, if that makes sense. That's what we were measuring out earlier when we put the iron on the side and put this on the edge of the board.
Right. And then when you get to a point, I have a non-project related question.
Yeah, what you got?
Okay, 2 seconds.
Just while you're doing that, I'm going to clamp this on the side.
Okay.
So I can come out through and chisel out the waste in between those two cuts. So I'm going to set everything up for that.
All right, I'm ready.
What you got?
Lynx asks, not on topic for this build, but on topic for tools, do you find there's any big difference for the Bridge City tools over, say, Veritas, Neilson, or Wood River for about double the price?
For functional and usability, Bridge City tools are not about functional usability. They are about aesthetics and feel and comfort. They are no more functional than any other. And in many cases, I say they're less functional, though they have a lot of fun to them. And so that is what people are buying, is the fun, the name, and the look. Actual usability and functionally, Veritas is most commonly the best bang for the really good usable. It's not always the best bang for the buck, but usually, in my book, the best quality you're going to get without adding more price on. Though, I mean, in that case, my all-time favorite tool, my all-time favorite plane ever is the Veritas custom plane. It's very expensive, but oh, it's nice. Okay, I need a 3/8 and a 1/4 inch. Where did my 3/8 go? Oh, there it is. My 1/4 and 3/8 switch places. Make sure they're sharp. Yes, they are sharp. So we're going to use these to remove the waste in between the two. So let's come over to this. I'm going to start with my 1/4 inch here because I've got a little bit more leeway on there. If I bring in the 3/8, that should be the exact width it will be, and so I'm going to use this to do the final cleanup on it. So I'm going to start, actually bring the camera over here so you guys can see into the hole a little better. There we go. I'm going to start with my 1/4 inch, and I'm going to come back onto this side, and I'm going to be aiming up. I don't want to aim down or across. Just tapping it until I get down close to the depth I want. Okay, we're down close to depth here. So I'm going to come across. And I'm flattening out the back side here. I don't know if you guys can see that. And I'm still about 1/8 inch away from depth. So we've gotten rid of most of that. Then I'm going to come around to this side and I'm going to chisel back towards myself, which is not wise.
I say disclaimer, disclaimer.
Yes. But unfortunately, that's where the camera's at. Let me grab a mallet so I can do it from the other side. Mallets actually give you more control. They will allow you to control your impact, so especially if you need to chisel in an odd direction or an odd method, they give you that moment so you're not going to be blowing through and hitting yourself on the other side or damaging your work. So let's plane this. Yeah, you gotta love hard maple. Okay. Now, we have that roughly to shape. Let's fit the iron in there and see what we get. Okay, so it's pinching down here. It's too tight down there. It's too tight right here. So I need to make that groove just a little bit wider. And so for that, we can bring in a normal chisel, or I could come in with a file, but I'll find this a little bit easier. Just to widen it out a hair. And come in from the other side with a mallet. Reach through. Mallet is what brings us together. When pounding towards yourself, be careful. Okay, so the 3/8 inch chisel fits in there. Let's see what the iron does. It's still a little bit tight right there. So let's take off a little more. Do it on the other side this time.
I have another not related question. When you
Yeah, what we got?
Nipun asked, not related, but why is it so hard to find bevel up low angle wooden planes? I'm assuming it's due to the thin area between the bed and the sole. I'm making one right now with a steel inlay. Would that work?
The bevel up planes are not really historical. There are very few places where you ever see a bevel up plane. They just don't have a crazy amount of use. The whole thing about liking bevel up planes is a very modern thing. That is very new. Stanley came out with the 62 bevel up plane to do butcher blocks because they are great for ingrain. But they didn't sell that many of them because there aren't too many people who specialized in ingrain butcher blocks. And so there aren't that many of them to buy, and so that's why the price is so high, because there's a great demand without the desire. And so there weren't a lot of reasons to make a bevel up plane if you're making it yourself. And if you did need that low angle work, then you kept it bevel down, you just lowered the angle of the frog so that it would be a lower angle cutting, but still bevel down. Because bevel down gives more control, but makes it much easier to make because you don't have to have that thin wedge on the bottom. But yes, I mean, they did exist, but they were very rare because they just weren't as functional and they were more difficult to make.
Is JJ awake?
Yeah, the kids are up, so I don't know if you guys can hear that. I'm just widening it out a little bit. Make sure that I can get this iron to fit in there. There, it's fitting down. That's looking pretty good. Let me actually grab a file. Oop, not that one. That one. So with a file, I can come in here and I can detail it out a little bit, smooth it out. Use it to float out the bottom a bit. There we go. Now it's in there tight. There isn't much rotation to it. It's just got a little bit of slop. That's perfectly fine because we still want it to be able to adjust up and down. So how is the epoxy coming? Coming along. So while we're doing that, let's actually work on the depth adjustment mechanism, because we want it to come all the way up to here, and then we want it to be able to come down to around there. So we'll have about 3/4 inch of depth, which is generally more than you'd ever need for a what's it really for? Tendon router.
So how long do you, okay, you're going to take the clamp off now? As I was wondering.
No, I'm not taking the clamp off yet.
You're not taking, okay.
I'm just going until I feel the epoxy is hard.
Okay.
And actually, I usually keep one of those pieces of tape that I mixed up on the bench. Let me grab those.
So that you know.
Yeah. Because right now it is, let me show you this. So that's the tape, and it is a little bit rubbery still. Still flexible on here. So it's not quite as hard as I'd want yet. So it's usually about, with 5-minute epoxy, it's usually about 30 to 40 minutes until I would take the clamps off. So the next thing we need to do is we need to put in the depth adjustment screw. And on this one, I was going back and forth with a couple different things, because you can actually put in a threaded insert into the wood, and that would work perfectly fine. Actually, that would work great. The problem is I'm going to have such a little space back here in order to have the U-bolt work that putting an insert in there could be disastrous. And so I'm going to do something a little bit different. Here, let's flip this around because I don't want that back up there. And I want to get these handles out of the way. Set this on here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. What's that?
Question for you. Talking about the blade for these, which do you prefer? The type you're using, which is solid, or the ones that have carbide or removable / changeable tips?
I do not like the changeable tips. Very personal preference. Wrong button. The changeable tips, they technically make them easier to sharpen, but then you're holding on to this tiny little piece that's really hard to hold on. I actually find these that are solid easier to sharpen than it is to sharpen those changeable tips. Number two, I've had several times, not on mine, but seen from other people, where there's been problems with the screw stripping out or the head on the screw stripping out and then causing problems taking it off. I've just seen a lot of issues with them, and I haven't seen a benefit that is greater than a solid piece. And once you get to carbide, yeah, you could put carbide on there. They're just more of a pain to sharpen. And I don't sharpen mine that much, so there really isn't a huge reason for that. So yeah, my personal preference, but a lot of people like them, so. Stu,
I was just going to ask you a question, darn it.
What's that?
I was going to ask you a question that left my mind. Oh, I know what it was. So considering where we are, it's 9:54. I'm just curious how much longer time-wise you're thinking.
This will be functional in about another 20 minutes.
Okay, just to give
and then
them
we'll be doing
idea.
detail and prettiness on it. So I need to be able to get, and I want to make sure my groove is deep enough here before I put this on. I want to put the U-bolt on here, and it needs to be deep enough that I can start these screws onto the back. Actually start them on here. I want them to be somewhere around there. So it's not quite deep enough. I need another 1/16 of an inch or 1/8 inch of an inch, because I need enough space for these screws to rest on the back, but then pull this back in. So let me actually cut that a little deeper before I cut the depth screw. And a lot of people ask me why I don't use plans, because this is the part of the woodworking that I really enjoy. I love the prototyping and figuring it out, and I've made probably about 12 different router planes now, and I've made every one of them very different because I want to learn. I want to try new things. I want to explore and play with things, and that's really what I'm doing here, is just experimenting. This prototyping is what I find to be fun. And yeah. So I'm just going to be cutting these sidewalls on the hole. Aren't you letting me turn you? There we go. I'm cutting the sidewalls on this just a little bit deeper so that I can come in, and I'm going to lower this whole thing just about a little more than a 1/16 of an inch. So come in from this side. That's a little too deep. Let's use the 1/4 inch instead. And we're going to remove this down to the depth of those 2 saw marks. Come around to the other side so we don't blow it out.
Okay.
What you got?
Did you just adjust something with the camera? I got the Comet camera, but I was checking something else real quick.
I don't think so.
Okay. And then Peter asked, is that a 3/8 inch cutter, and why did you choose that size?
Yes, it's 3/8 inch wide. Because that is the one that Rockler had on sale. They were $15 a piece, so you just can't beat that. You can get whatever size you want, though. 3/8 inch is a good one. I probably use the 1/2 inch a little more than anything else, but make sure I'm working. Yeah, I need to go a little deeper on the other side. So I need to go a little deeper on your side of it. I'm just cutting down the sidewalls a little bit more. Then we can come in and remove the waste in between. I'm just going out the other side because I'm removing tiny little bits. Clean out the corners.
Ow.
Little fiddling here, little fiddling there.
Okay, I have a question for you.
What's that?
Are you going to fill notches, file notches into the U-clamp to let it better fit? Okay.
I won't file them, but I'll carve them. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Put the U-bolt on the back here and make sure we got enough space for it.
Ooh.
Perfect. Cool. Now our groove is down deep enough. So it's about a 1/2 inch deep here, so we have about a 1/2 inch at the bottom here to the back wall. That 1/2 inch will give us enough to then put in our depth adjuster screw. By the time we're done with the depth adjuster screw, it should be about time to take the clamps off, and then we can do a lot of detailing on it. Because I'll actually have the depth adjuster screw in there to be the difference on it. So,
Okay,
what's that?
I have a question.
What's that?
Was that a rasp you were using just now?
No. This is a keyhole saw.
Ah, okay.
So it is a saw with a very, very small back.
Is it a particular brand or just that looks like one of your
This is a
finds.
Sheffield, England footprint brand. Footprint brand. That's what it says on there.
So you just picked it up.
Yeah, no, a keyhole saw. Here, let me actually show you this. They're kind of a cool tool. And I don't use them that much, but when you need one, they are just so useful. So on this one, the cool thing about these, they have these 2 screws that actually clamp onto the blade. And so I can loosen these up. And now the blade can slide freely, and it actually can come out the other end of, as long as I loosen it, it can come out the other end of the handle. And the reason that's cool is that I can shorten this down to just a little bit. And so if I really want to have control, I can have my saw just that long. It's a cross-cut filed tooth pattern. And this can then go in, and you use a couple screws to clamp it down in place. It's a little bit thicker plate than normal because it has to be. And so it's a very useful, functional saw. But keyhole saw, yeah, and there's Footprint brand, Sheffield, England. Yeah, when doing the book stand, the Roubeau style book stand, that's very, very useful. So I'm going to grab a tap that's a 1/4 to fit my depth screw. If you want to use a threaded insert, those work great. The problem is there just isn't a whole lot of space because we only have a 1/2 inch on the back of it, and that 1/2 inch is going to just not be quite enough. So 1/4 tap, and I always like to make sure by threading my tap into one of the nuts to make sure that it is indeed the size I want. And the tap should just tight fit. What am I catching? There we go. Yeah. So the tap should be ever so slightly larger than the nut, because you want to make those threads, with wood, they kind of crush out. And so we need to put on, actually I'm going to do it with this. I'll do it with this. I'm going to use my short throw brace. We're going to use all 3 braces today. And I'm going to use that to clamp down on here. So, now I've got my tap set into the end of my brace. Now we need to drill the hole for the tap to fit in. And this is always wise to do some experiments first, because reality is never as you expect it. So grab a scrap piece of wood, and you don't want to drill a 1/4 inch hole for a 1/4 inch tap. It needs to be a little smaller than that. So in this case, I'm going to go down to, where are you at? Not a 1/4. Where's my smaller auger bolt? There we are. I'm going to go down to a 3/16, which is probably a bit too small, but we will find out. Where did my brace go? It's up here. And I'll drill several holes and tap them and experiment with them and see what we get. Now there is specific sizes you would want if you're doing it in metal, but in wood there's a lot of give in it, and you actually want to make the hole a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger than you would. You want to make the hole a little bit smaller than you would, because the tap will actually crush the fibers out. So I got that on there, and I'm not putting a lot of pressure into the brace. I'm letting the screw do the work. Just going to tap it. Bring it back through. And then we will test it with a bolt and see what we get. Did we get lucky on the first try? So let's thread the bolt in. And that's a bit sloppy. So I need a slightly bigger, slightly smaller bit. And unfortunately, my next one is 1/8. That's a bit too small. So let's go over to my other bits. So 3/16 is a bit too big. And in metal, that would actually be too small. Mark Spagnola has a set that is really, really cool. It's designed for woodworking. Let's try 11/64.
Because why not?
Oop, come on, tighten down. There we go. Okay, 11/64. Let's come in and tap that out. And I'm not putting much pressure on the tap. I'm letting its threads do the cutting, pulling its way through. Except for now it's just stripping out. Why is it just stripping out? I think that might be just a hair too small. Yeah, now it's just boring. So, yeah, you're too big. Where are all of my good ones at? Here we go. Let's try you. You're actually 11/64. I think this one was just in the wrong slot. It's like, that looks a little bit too small for 11/64. Let's try this one. So with the tap, in steel, you need to make sure you back it out regularly. Otherwise, you will clog it up and you could actually break the tap. But for most woods, that's not a huge issue. Usually I'll go 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch before backing it and pulling it out. Because you have a very good possibility of cross-threading. Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. You have a very good possibility of cross-threading and causing more issue. There we go. So, now we have found our drill bit and our tap. Let's come over here. Let's make sure that we're putting this exactly where we want it to be. Because this is probably the most tricky part of this whole build, is putting this hole exactly where it needs to be and making sure it's exactly vertical. So I'm going to put the iron into place, and then I'm going to put this screw into place. Let's do it the other way though. Back this thread the other direction. So I want to make sure that's exactly where it needs to be this way. If it's too far back, then that bit is not going to engage with this. If it's too close, it could be pushing the bit out too far. So I'm going to put this into place, set this down, make sure it's all where I want it to be. I'm going to bring in a mallet and go tap, tap, tap. I'm actually going to put that head into here, marking precisely where it needs to be. Grab my knife. I'll mark the middle of that hole. So that's where I want my hole to be. Then we're going to grab the brace with the bit, put that on here, and now we can drill in. Now to make sure I'm going vertical, I'm going to look at it from this point, and I'm going to eyeball vertical this way. I'm going to come around here, make sure I knock boards over. That is very important. And this orientation is more important than the other orientation because I want the bit
You know
to run
your
up and down.
camera pole is like right in front of
It is, isn't it?
Very well, kinda. That's better.
There we go. Because this orientation is far more important than left to right.
So, because you can't do the ring trick, so what are you doing to make?
I'm just eyeballing it.
Just eyeball, okay.
Yep. It doesn't have to be dead perfect. If you're off a 1/2 degree one way or the other, you're good, but the eyeball is usually very acceptable when it comes to drilling vertical holes, as long as you don't have something behind you that is off. Though if you really want to be fun, you could always set up a square to give your eye that something to connect off of.
So I have a question for you.
What's that?
Dennis wants to know, do you have special taps and dies for Stanley Bailey handguns?
No, I do not. I was actually talking with Jeff, and we were thinking about making those. But no, I do not have all the fun threads, like the quarter 22. There are a lot of really interesting threads that Stanley used.
So Devin wants to know, how hard are you pushing down?
I'm not pushing much at all. Letting the weight of the drill do it. Because this is a pretty decent twist bit.
Excuse me.
Now that it's established, I really don't care. I'm just going to pull it out occasionally and make sure I clean out any of the dust. Let's see, how deep down do I need it to go? We're almost there. I don't want it to go all the way through, so I'm going to stop it right around there. So I'm about a 1/4 inch or so from the bottom. So now we can bring in this.
Oh, crap.
And we can tap down. I'm going to tap down to about there. Then we'll back it out. Clean it out because I don't want to clog all those threads. But then we want to make sure when we put it back in that we don't cross thread the threads we just created. So I'm not putting any pressure at all now. There we go. Oop. It's slipping. The problem of clamping onto a square shaft, or onto a round shaft. So we're threaded down about 3/4 inch. I want to go a little deeper than that. Let's actually try and clamp back here where I can get a little more grip. And try it again. Being very, very careful not to cross thread it. Let the tap do its work.
Oh, my foot fell asleep.
Your foot fell asleep.
Yes. Oh, excuse me.
Okay. So we are threaded down a little over 1 inch, which is where I want it to be. I want it to thread a little bit into the bottom block. So now we're going to grab this and we're going to start threading it down in. I'm going to grab another 1/4 20 nut. Actually, I'm going to grab a couple of them. Any questions while I'm grabbing that?
Uh-oh. Oh, excuse me.
Sorry, just grabbing these. 1/4 20, there we are. And what I can do with a couple 1/4 20s, I can make sure that I drop the nuts I need on the floor. There we go.
You really missed the opportunity to go on nuts.
Is I can thread these on and I can jam them together. So put one down, then put the other one on it, and I'm going to twist them together against each other. And so now I can drive these down on there. And if I was really thinking ahead of time, I would have grabbed, oh yes, I can do that. Hang on a second. I have one down here, don't I? A socket driver. Bingo. Let's bring those up to the top.
I have a couple of questions.
Yep, what you got?
Frank wants to know why not use a standard tap handle?
Because I didn't have enough space in between the jaws here. And tap handles are great when you need a lot of torque, but for wood you don't need much torque. And I need to jam these together a little better. So to jam these together, I'm going to use 2 different crescent wrenches. So I should use regular open-end wrenches. I don't have the right size here. Just give them a little tweak. So now I can put this on here, and I can grab the brace. Where'd the other one go? I'll use this one. Use this to fit into here. And so now, to put a lot more force on this, and drive this bolt way down in there. So I'm grabbing onto those threads, but I'm also starting to create new threads as it gets down into that hole where it's not been threaded. And let's see how close that is. Go just a little farther.
So Thomas Russell wants to know, do you ever soak wood threads with CA glue and retap?
You can, yeah. It's not necessary. It will make them a little bit stronger, but they are incredibly strong. It's one of those things that you don't expect how strong wood threads are. This, I would have no problem trusting my life to that. That's an incredibly strong connection. Yeah. So. Now let's see how close we've gotten here. Okay,
what camera do you think you're on?
On the big one.
Okay, well your other camera's completely blocking it.
Yep, here, let me show you what we've got here now. So now I can do depth adjustment with this and move the iron up and down. So I got this screw at 3 inches, and it's a little longer than it needs to be. Probably got about a 1/2 inch on there more than I need, but that will give me that adjustment all the way down to here. And also now that I have this bolt through here, it's clamping this together. Let's see how hard our epoxy is. Still a little rubbery, but now that I got this bolt in here, I'm going to take these clamps off. Just want to be careful not to be forcing it all over the place. So we've got that on there. Next thing we need to do is put the U-bolt on that will hold this in place. So the U-bolt needs to go through there. So it's going to basically go on like that, but down a little lower. I like that. I like that a lot. That's actually working pretty well. So we need to measure where these 2 holes are going to go.
So for the people like me who don't know prices or anything, are you making this router plane because you want to? Is it cheaper than buying?
Yes, yeah. Right now, router planes are very expensive. There are a lot of users who have come on the market recently, and the price on a decent router plane has gone up to the point that antique ones are almost the exact same price as a brand new one now. And the thing about router planes is that they're relatively easy to make. This is a very, very complicated router plane. I've got 5 or 6 other videos on how to make a router plane, where you can make a very, very simple one, or you could go like the poor man router, like Paul Sellers shows, which is just a block of wood with a chisel jammed into it. And it will do perfectly fine. These are just making things a little bit easier to adjust. They're not really necessary, they're just fun. So let's figure out where we want these to be. Let me bring this around over here. So on this, I need to bring it into frame. There we go. So what I want to do here is take these nuts off so I know where the bolt is at. And I want to drill holes for these down lower. And I want them to be just about as low as they can be. I want them to be somewhere right around here on the block, in the bottom 1/3 of this top block. So I'm going to use a knife here, and I'm going to mark where the center of this one is, and mark where the center of this one is. And then I'm going to take these out. I'm going to bring in that square I had earlier. And I'm going to transfer that mark down a little farther. Let's go down to here. Do it around on this side.
Now, are you just eyeballing and guessing how deep you want it?
Yeah, I haven't actually set a depth down yet. So let me bring the camera around to this side then. It's going to be harder because that's the side I'm on. So we'll be on here. There. So I've got these marks down here that are the right distance apart. So I made a mark here, and then brought those down to here and here. Now I want these to be at the same height down from the top of this. And so for that, I can bring this in, and I'm going to actually adjust this a little bit higher. Basically going to use it like a marking gauge. And I want them to be at about that depth. Just eyeballing it, it's down about 3/4 inch, up about 1/4 inch from the bottom. And then I'm going to put a cross mark at each of those marks, right at the bottom of this. So I know that I need to drill my hole right where those 2 marks meet. Do the same thing over on this side. Come over this way. So we need to go there, right where those 2 marks meet. So that's where I need to drill my hole for that to go in. And these are 1/4 inch, these are 1/4 20. So I need to drill a 1/4 inch hole. I could make it a little bit larger than 1/4 inch, but there's no need to. So I'm going to grab 1/4 inch auger bit, put that in here, and we are going to use the ring trick to make sure that we are drilling level through this. So focus, there we go. So we can set this on here. I can put that right into there. Oop, make sure I'm tight. Oh, duh. This chuck doesn't like the hex bits. And so that's why I have a hex bit adapter. These you can actually get from Tay Tools, and I love them. For the simple 1/4 inch, you can buy them from Veritas, and they have a magnet in the back. But I found that to cause a few issues here and there. I like these with the actual tighten down screw, so they lock on nicely. So I'm going to put this on the shaft, put my hole into there, and with the ring trick, I can eyeball this way, and then the ring lets me know if I am vertically in the right position.
So Ed wants to know, did Rockler have the router iron plain irons, whatever, in stock before the live stream? Because now
Yes.
it's temporarily oversold.
Yes. They had a good stock of them before I made the announcement. And then after I made the announcement, they were sold out within a day or two. So, sorry, but it didn't matter who I went with. I would have had to tell them 6 months or more ahead of time so that they could get them ordered. And I'm not worrying about blowout on the other side because we're going to do a good bit of carving to make it fit right. There we go. Now let's check and make sure this is where I want to be. So I can take this U-bolt, put it through those holes. Nice, I like it. So now on this side, the blowout has actually helped us get started with where we want to be. Focus, there we go. So now we need to cut out enough space. So when I put this in here, I can get my fingers in the way of the camera. This goes in, and they're ever so slightly out of balance. Let's actually rat tail those out a little bit first. So they were ever so slightly pointed out away from each other. But we can fix that with a rat tail file. You can come in here, just widen the hole out a little bit. Do tiny tweaks.
No, that is a rasp.
What's that? That's a file.
That's a file.
Yes.
I'm going to get them right one day. The rasps are flatter, aren't they?
No, a rasp is not hardened.
I'll
The
learn
file
one
is
day.
hardened.
I'll learn.
So there, now we can get this in and out. Still a little tight, and that is perfectly okay. Rather tight than loose. The loose isn't that bad. Now, we need to file out the gap so that we can get this rounded shape into here. And so for that, I'm going to grab a simple 1/4 inch chisel, and we'll come in here, bevel down. I'm just going to remove the material here and here until I get down a little ways farther.
All right, so Dennis says, please explain the difference of that auger bit with wide flat faces and bits with skinny faces.
Wide flat.
I don't know.
I don't know what you mean, man. You're going to have to clarify that one a little better. So then I can come in from the side here, bevel down, remove some more down to that hole. And so now that slot comes back a good ways farther. So let's test. Oop. Oh, that's why. Like, why can't I get the handle any lower? My bench is in the way. To put an angle like that. There we go. Look at that. Now I can get it the right height. Just clean out that junk. So now we can put this in here. We can slide it back. And then we can put our iron in. We want to make sure it goes all the way back and clamps into the iron. Like that. So now it goes all the way back in. And I can fit my nuts on the back of this.
So if I say referring to the flutes, does that make more sense?
What's that?
Referring to the flutes?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Just a second, I'll take a look at that.
Okay.
So I've got these on back here. Let's actually clamp that in place. So I can take these nuts off. And so now, when I tighten these nuts down, it pulls that U-bolt and then pulls the whole iron back against this. So when I need to adjust it now, I can loosen these up, and then I can turn this thumb screw. It's just that tight. It's just that tight. So I can turn the thumb screw, and I can raise the iron up, and then tighten it back down in place. And so now I have a fully adjustable. So when I want to, I can loosen that, and then change. Ooh, slipped off. Loosened it too much. If you loosen it too much, then the iron pops out of that. And so let's not do quite that much. There we go.
Good thing you got rubber flooring.
Yeah. So now I can bring the iron up to there, which is flush with the bottom. So I've got that much movement. So about 3/4 inch of movement on there. And then tighten it down to lock it in at whatever height you want. So at that point, this is a functional router. That's all it needs. Everything else is just detail and cleanup work on it. So what, an hour and a half? Mm-hmm. And now we have one with a fully adjustable depth. Now, this is not perfect. There are a lot of little funky things on it that are out. Looking at it now, my depth adjustment screw is ever so slightly out of alignment that way. That's not a huge issue. In this plane, it's perfect, and that's the one that really matters. Functional-wise, I kind of like it. Let's make it look pretty, though, because this isn't as comfortable to use. Well, let me actually answer the question. So I have some of these that are out of focus. Here we go. So I've got these auger bits that have a single cutting head. And these are modern ones because making them this small with 2 cutting heads is difficult and really isn't as beneficial. So for the smaller ones, I like a single cutting head. But for the larger ones, I go with the wood owls. Let me grab one of those. So 3/8 and larger, I use these that have 3 cutting heads. And these are just modern versions of the old ones. The old Irwin and Jennings style have 2 cutting heads, and so they'll have different surfaces. Some people like to have the single cutters that have these flat faces, so that they ride a little bit better in the hole. You tend to get a little smoother surface from it, but not that much. So in the end, it's mostly a personal preference between them.
Yeah. He followed up by saying that he thought maybe the wide flat faces were for woodworking and smooth holes, and regular bits are for construction.
No. Okay. The wide flat faces are just there because there's 1 cutting head, and you can't get the wide flat faces on 2 cutting heads. The idea is that they give you a smoother hole. They don't. And I've never actually had an occasion where I need a hole smoother than what I get from anything else. So no reason for that. Okay, let me make sure I got this before I get there. Yeah, we'll do a quick demonstration with it here in a moment. I'm going to do a little cleanup here. Any questions while I'm doing that? No questions yet? See, one of the things I love about a tool wall is that cleanup I can do almost entirely without moving my feet everything is right here. Everything has its place and a slot where it fits, as long as I put it in the right direction. Well, as long as I put it in the right slot. And everything can then get cleaned up and out of the way. Because otherwise you get this cluttery mess on the bench. Most of the time, the easiest way to clean up is to do that. Oh, look at that, nice clean bench. I like that. So, yeah, now when it comes down to the shaping and the organization and the actual aesthetics of it, that is completely user preference. A lot of people like to have knobs on the side, just like the Stanleys had. Pull that iron out before I forget it. The reason Stanleys have the knobs on the side is because they have a very thin sole. They're made of metal, so the metal down here is really thin. Most of the time when I'm using them, I'm actually going to be pinching down here at the bottom. I'm not grabbing the knobs, because if I'm grabbing the knobs, all my force is up here high, and it's actually going to be rocking the plane. The lower you can grab it, the more control you're going to have, the less chance you're going to be rocking the plane forward. So I actually don't put knobs on the ones I make. I like to actually just make them grabbable. But that means that I'm going to want to do something. Like I'm going to be grabbing the main surface on this to move it back and forth. On this one, because it's for tenons, let me show you how to grab this. So with a tenon, the most important thing is that it actually be referenceable. So I want this large face out here to be something that I can reference the face of the cheek of the tenon on. Make sure I'm where I want to be. I'm not where I want to be.
You want to be where the people are.
So what I can do here is on this one, I'm going to be putting weight out here, and I'm going to be moving the head to clean out the cheek of the tenon. So on this, I'm just going to be putting weight down here. I don't need anything special here other than making it a little more ergonomic. And then on this end, I'm going to be grabbing this to be moving it with just pinched fingers. So I really don't need anything here. So on this particular router plane, I'm going to round the corners, and I'm going to make this block feel a little bit better. Other than that, there really isn't too much to it. So let's take the hardware off. So if anyone has questions, throw them in there. I'd be glad to answer them. There's a lot of just talking, which is kind of what YouTube videos are. Come on, out of there. Let's get this out. Yay, 1/4-inch threads and 1/4-inch holes. Come on, out. There it goes. I'm going to leave this bolt in for the moment. Actually, yeah, I'm going to leave the bolt in for a moment because it is actually still holding this epoxy bed on there. We're going to do some rounding on the corners. And this is one of my favorite things to do because it's just simple and clean. And if you look up router planes, old wooden router planes, there are hundreds of designs and styles. And it's just kind of fun to see how one simple tool can be done so many different ways just to get to the same goal, because everyone has a different thing that they like. Everyone has something that this is comfortable to me. No, this is comfortable to me. So whatever's comfortable to you is best. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to set this up here, and I'm going to go whack, whack. Now this is hard maple. It's not pine. And this chisel is as dull as the day it could be. So let me actually go sharpen that. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Go on my coarse diamond plate. This one actually needs a bit of work. So I'm going to see how it is.
Well, I'm so glad we can stare at a piece of wood while you
work on sorry. Your diamond plate. There we go. So there's a small chip in the corner I'm getting rid of. There we go. Medium. And then extra fine. Pull the burr off the back. Make sure, oh yeah, there we go. then a couple strokes in the strop.
So poor man wants to know, is the 1-inch board a necessity? Because he can get 3/4 to 7/8 of an inch, but not 1 inch.
No, 3/4 is not a necessity. You might need to build up something more for the little piece to glue on there, but 3/4 is perfectly fine. I'm using 1 inch because I have 1 inch
late.
here. What's that?
Is that he joined us a little late?
Yeah, no, I'm using 1 inch because that's what I've got. Oh, that's pretty. So we're going to start lopping off a corner. Like this. I'm going to come back here really low.
So if some people are not as comfortable freehanding with a chisel like that, is this just time to practice, or is there another?
Oh, this is a great thing to practice on.
Okay.
Then when you come out here to the corner, it's easier to cut across the grain and shear it. I'm not blowing out the other side. This is a great, great thing to practice. Get the freehand skill down. That's what hand tools are all about. It's all about the freehand, not relying on a jig, just cutting it yourself. So there's rounded-ish. I'm going to grab a small rasp. So this is a rasp. It's got all those teeth on it. Round it over. And then I'm going to grab my file. There to go. There it is. And the file just gets rid of the marks from the rasp. Just like that. We got a nice rounded corner.
So Devin and I want to know, can you use a spoke shave, or is that too big of a...
Spokeshave? Yeah. Well, you'd want to use the chisel to start it. And then bring it. Let me pull out the spokeshave and show you that then. Have to move over to this side of the jaw. But yeah, spokeshave, I wouldn't want to make this whole curve with a spokeshave because it is a lot of removal. And spokeshaves do not do as well with cross grain work, in grain work. Focus that up. There we go. So I would still come in with this, and I'd start here, lop off large chunks. Just getting rid of the majority of the waste. And then I'd come back here. Now if this was something softer like a pine, the end grain is a lot easier to work with on that. Whereas this is a lot of material. So we've gotten our general shape on there. So then I could come in with, grab my 151, see if it's sharp. We need to back that off a little bit. So then with this, takes a little bit more. Let's get that right spot on there. There, rounded shape with the spokeshave. I think after the spokeshave, I'd still come through with a file just to get rid of some of those horizontal marks that I might leave. Doesn't take much at all, just that. Got a nice clean transition from one side to the other. Now the other thing I want is, this is the bottom side of it, so I want that to stay nice and sharp. But on the top side here, I don't like sharp corners with my hands. So the easiest way to fix those, let me just do it with a 4 in hand. So this has a rasp and a file. This side is curved, this side is flat. Just a cheap piece of steel. You can pick these up in most big box stores for $5, $6. And I'm going to round over the edge here with the rasp. Pull that up a little bit higher. The rasp gives you the shape you want. And then you can roll it over, grab the file. And the file gives you that smooth, clean feeling. No sanding necessary. Just like that. Nice rounded corner on there. So we can do it on the other side. Actually, I'm going to do all of this. I'm going to have this rounded edge here transition into a chamfer, because I'm going to be chamfering off this block. I'm going to use a different file. This one's a little bit more aggressive.
Lynx wants you to bring out the custom rasp.
Custom rasp?
Oh, that's what they said. Do you have a special rasp that you use?
I do not have a custom rasp.
I don't know.
And so I'm going to be chamfering with a file. There's something fun about the transition from a rounded surface to a chamfered surface. Just slightly pleasing. Do the same thing on the other side. Yeah, I don't know what you mean by custom rasp. Unless you're talking about like rifflers. But no, I don't know if a riffler would work on this. This is something else I need to do.
Custom stitched rasp.
Oh, a hand stitch. I don't have any hand Actually, no, my Narrows are hand stitched. That's right. These Narrows are hand stitched rasps. There, hand stitched. So the other thing is that this surface isn't perfectly flush with this surface. Not necessary, but annoying. So I'm just going to plane this down.
So let's
Get
see.
those two surfaces nice and clean.
Mary wants to know, is there a way to build
There we go.
in a depth stop?
A depth stop?
I don't know.
That's basically what that. Oh, what you can do is put on that screw, put a nut down below, so that it screws down until it hits that nut, and it won't go any lower than that. But yeah, router planes, I never use the depth stop, because usually the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to chisel or plane down close to the depth I want, and then I'm going to have the router plane just do that last pass. It's very rare that I use that to cut down the same depth on every one. The router plane is a detail cleaner. It's not the tool you use to remove all the waste. So it's not something I use that much, though there are people who use it like that. Oh yes, corners. So we're going to continue on smoothing out these corners. Use my hand stitched rasp. And this works really, really well just to do that quick cleanup. Then come in with the file. And all I'm doing is rounding over this top edge so it feels a little more comfortable. Go with the grain direction.
James, which camera do you think you're on?
The big one.
Okay, just making
Yep.
sure. You were looking
And then
at the
I'm
other one.
Actually, this whole front edge I can chamfer with a spokeshave, since it's right here on my bench. Happy little curls.
I was waiting. I was like, wow, it's taking me this long to say happy little girl.
There's a front edge chamfer. Now we're going to chamfer off or round off this corner. Where did it go? Chisel. Here we are. So just as before, lop off most of the corner. Let's actually tighten this down.
I was like,
Here, move the camera up. Sorry. Focus. There you go. Just do it freehand. And I love hard maple. Not. It's one of my least favorite woods in all honesty because it's very blah. There's not much to it, but there's a lot of work to it. And it dulls things quickly. But everyone likes something different. To get it close, bring in the rasp. Then I'll start back here, and as I go through the whole stroke, I'll rotate it. So as I'm going through the stroke, I'm moving it forward. So hopefully I can get this whole thing in one pass. That'll give you a really nice curve. Come into the file, do the same thing, just like that. Then let's round. And I'm not putting much pressure on this at all. I'm letting the weight of the rasp do the work. Then come with the file and clean it out. I generally prefer to use individual rasp and file than 4-in-hand, but the 4-in-hand works fine. And it is a great beginner's tool because you can get a lot done with the 4-in-hand. Oop, a little more here. There's that corner. One more corner on here.
All right. I have another question. First of all, can I just say I'm so excited. We have like way more women on the chat than like ever. Like, welcome, ladies.
On the chat today?
Yeah.
There has been a decent uptick of women woodworkers, and I like that. There'd be more women in the shop.
I was like, wow, there's lots of females.
This is not a guys-only project.
No. Okay, but then Laura has a question for you.
Except for Sarah, she's not allowed to use her bench.
Hey, I can actually see the top of it today, which is progress.
What's the question?
Would putting a knob on the left end make for better leverage or control?
So, from the left end, I'm assuming from your side over here? No, because I mean the way I hold a router plane is I'll pinch it down low. I don't hold the knob. Because if you hold the knob, your force is up higher, and that causes more rotational force on the router. So I actually prefer to hold it down lower. And so I'd be grabbing the block itself rather than the router itself. So if I put a knob up there, I'm creating a higher force on it that'll cause it to rotate. And especially when working with wood, your sole is already much thicker. And so if you put a knob on top of that, it's going to move it up even higher. And the higher you move it, the more rotational force you're putting on it. So you want to get that force down as low as you can. And so knobs are great for metal planes where the sole is really thin, and so you can actually put a knob on there and still not have the rotational force that high. But for wooden ones, you start running into issue with the knob. Though, I mean, it's personal preference. If you want it, great, go for it. That's just my take on it. So, one more corner. And then yay, hard maple. Let's come with this, do the detailing.
So the question on everyone's mind, are you going to carve?
What's that?
So the question on everyone's mind, are you going to carve your...
I don't think I want to do that on live. I don't know, maybe I do want to do that. You guys let me know.
Well,
Do you want the live to go that long?
Sarah does need to use the restroom at some point this morning.
This would be a good surface to carve in.
Well, that's what I was thinking.
I'll let you guys think. What should I carve into it? If you want me to do that, come up with a pattern or something you want me to carve.
They're asking
do a simple
about
Celtic
switching
weave.
Camera view. Do you
What's
want
that?
to be on the broad?
Oh yeah, let me switch over to this one. Let me turn this around here. Then bring that up to 3. where'd it go? It was sitting right there a moment ago.
Floral.
Oh. Filing against the grain. Not always best, but sometimes you just gotta. Chamfer on there. Chamfer on there. Chamfer across there. Across there. Don't need much of anything, just a little bit. I'll be careful here not to hit the bed. Then rotate around and do the other side. Except for you want us to be able to see it. Except for I can't do it that way, so let's do it this way.
So we're going for a very floral theme so far. Vines, a tree. No Celtic knots, I don't know.
What's that?
No Celtic knots. So Laura said when she'd asked about putting the knob on the left, she meant your left, not our left.
Oh, well, you could. The whole thing with this is just having the downforce over here. So I find it easier just to put weight on there. But if you like a knob, put a knob on there. No right or wrong. It's your router plane, whatever you want to do. Do a little bit of cleanup on here, and I think we're about ready. I'm going to grab the card scraper, do the details on that. Do I want to carve something on there, babe? If you need to run to the bathroom.
Well, okay. We're almost coming on 2 hours. So I don't know.
Okay. Yeah,
I
maybe
know
I'll do a live in the next
take
week
a
or two.
long
We'll do a carving demonstration. I'll finish it with some carving in there.
But we have a question that is totally unrelated to woodworking. And I don't know that I know this answer because I don't know that you have one.
42.
I know that answer.
Oh, what's that?
Nipun wants to know, what's your favorite Bond film? You're not a Bond.
Moonraker.
Moonraker?
Yeah.
We don't
It's just,
ever...
I don't think I've ever seen a Bond movie all the way through.
I was going to say we don't watch
I've watched little bits of this and that whenever there was like a marathon on TV, but yeah, I don't know. Moonraker because just anything space. But
I didn't even know that was a Bond film. There you go. Learn something new.
Okay. So I'm just getting rid of all of the dirt marks and hand stains and any other little issues on here. And so we can scrape it out. Also, there's a little bit of glue squeeze out in here. So a card scraper is great for getting rid of the glue squeeze out. Come in this way. Getting into tight corners. That's what card scrapers do best. Get rid of it. Yeah, maybe we'll have to do that as a live and we'll do some carving on this. Finish it up. So,
if you... Okay, we've got one Celtic and then we've had floral.
Yeah, we'll do some carving a little later. Yeah. So actually, I'll wait on that, and yeah, we'll do a live on that, and I'll do some carving on here and do the finish on it. Let me see. I didn't think about that. I should have done that.
Put your Wood by Wright logo in there.
I should have had a tenon to work on.
A tenon?
To demonstrate it, we're doing its work. But I didn't cut a tenon ahead of time. Let me do that. Let me cut a tenon quickly. So if there's any last minute questions, we'll cut a tenon, and then we'll show this actually working. So I'm going to grab...
Okay, so hang on. I have a question for you.
Here's a piece of oak. That'll be a good test for it.
Okay, James wants to know, could you use a skewed iron for slicing into the tendon?
Used a skewed iron?
For slicing?
Well, it's the nice thing about a router plane is it's always skewed. I mean, you can always just turn it and it's skewed. Oh, you're talking like one of the pointed irons. Yeah, if you want to. I don't like those as much. I prefer something straight so I get to work with it more. But it's, whatever you like. Marking gauge, where'd my marking gauge go? I slid it over here. There it is. Hey, look at that, I got a marking gauge. So we're gonna make a quick cheek and shoulder on here. So let us cut with my other saw, which is missing. Grab this saw. We're gonna cut ourselves a cable.
So are you going to finish it because you're going to wait on the carving?
Yeah, I'm going to wait on the carving. I'm going to wait on actually putting boiled linseed oil until we finish it. But...
Oh, they said maybe I should do the carving for the ladies.
Maybe. Maybe I'll man the live and Sarah does the carving.
Oh, dear Lord.
I'm going to cut down the shoulder of the tendon. I don't care what it is because I'm not actually doing joinery here. And I'm only making 1/2 of it. And now we need to cut the cheek of the tendon, so I'm going to mark that out. So we're going to mark down one side, across the top, down the other side.
So inquiring minds want to know, if you were finishing it today, what finish would you be using?
Boiled linseed oil and paste wax.
Surprise.
If it's a hand tool, something that goes in the hand, there's just nothing better, at least in my book.
So,
so when I cut this down, I'm going to stay a little ways away from the line. I'm going to intentionally make it a little bit wobbly. Let's move it away from the line a little bit more than that. Make it a little wobbly. Cut from one corner to another. What do you have, babe? You're gonna.
Yeah. I just.
Let me finish this then. And then we're gonna cut diagonally the other corner. Oop, too far. There we go. Really, really, really rough tenon. I'm gonna wipe those off. Now let's do some cleanup on this. What questions we got?
So, totally off topic.
Like
but
normal.
Normal. No, you're talking about the answer everything is 42. Did you know that there was a TV show, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy?
A TV show?
This is what poor man is telling
I do not know of this. I should look that
I
up.
knew you would be excited by this revelation.
I do not know of that.
So now we're going to have... Okay, poor man, where do we find this show? Because now we'll have to look it up. It's like one of James's favorite movies. So dumb.
Good book.
And book, yes.
It's one of the few that I actually like the movie, and I like both renditions of it almost as much as I like the book. Okay, so we're going to set this up. Bring this down so we can see underneath. There we go. And I'm starting to sweat. So now we can adjust, I'll loosen this up a little bit and adjust it up until the iron comes up. Just about there. Then we can lock it down with these nuts. And I can, here, I should put it up higher so you guys can see the whole thing. So I'm going to put this weight over here. And I'm going to grab it here. I'm not blowing out the far side. So I've routed up to here. I'm going to bring it back over here. So then we're going to drop it down just a hair, which is going this way. Tighten it back down. Do another depth here. Get right up against that shoulder. That's close. A little bit more. Tighten that down. That's really close. Getting a nice clean finish there. Loosen it up. Down. Tighten. There. Now we're right into that marking gauge line. So I'm starting here. I've cleaned out this area here. Then I'm going to come over here. I'm just going to clean out the outside edge. This is one place. Oh, I could do. No, I'm not going to do that. What I could do is I could turn the head around to come back in from the other side. Because in this case, I'm always blowing out. So I want to be very, very careful to skew out. So I guess this would be a good case for the skew iron. And when I'm skewing, I'm actually going in a circular motion. So what that is it's actually using the knife it's using the knife in there to actually slide across it rather than just pushing it. And so now that I've cleaned out this exit side, we can come back in. Let's just clean out any of the wisps I missed. There we go. That's a nice tin. Nice and flush across there. And I know that this is perfectly parallel to this face. So there. Tinning cutting router plane. And like I said before, I mean, you can make this any shape you want. I made it this way because I want to do this. A regular router plane like this, there just isn't enough swing out that I can grab it on there. Yes, I made a plate. I can put it on there and make it bigger. But the plate is always a little bit flimsy. And if I make the plate much more than 3/4 inch, then I can't stick the iron down much. So I really don't like using this as much. And that's why I wanted to make this. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, maybe I will do a live doing some carving and finishing detail on it. We'll just do that as part of like a short Q&A. Let me know your thoughts on that. Anything else we're forgetting, babe?
Okay, well, hang on.
We got questions? Okay, cool.
Everyone is helping you find the show on BBC, apparently. Okay. When ripping a piece, I've heard sawing uphill leaves a better finish. Any truth to this?
What saw?
Sawing uphill leaves a better finish.
Yes, you always want to go with the grain. So here, if this is the board, if you're going across the grain, then you're slicing every fiber. If you're going downhill, you're catching into all the fibers. If you're going uphill, then you're actually going with the grain. You're going to get a cleaner cutout. So that's why when I'm cutting a tenon, I'll start across the top and then I'll let the saw slowly sink down until it's coming across corner to corner this way. Then I'll turn the board around and I'll start up here and I'll let it sink down again until it's going corner to corner this way. And that way I'm always cutting uphill. I get a cleaner cut. It's easier to push. It feels good. There's less chance of it going off course. And then for the final test, I'll go from there down to being flat and cut all the way across. And yes, the word across has a T in it.
Yeah, we want to talk about that.
What's next?
Susan wants to know, did you sharpen the router iron before this demo?
No, actually I did not. That comes straight from Rockler. And it's not terribly sharp. But router irons actually don't need to be that sharp. It's very rare that a router iron needs to leave a glass smooth surface. They don't need to be that sharp. And this one actually is relatively sharp. It's not great. I'd say it's like a 300 for those of you following the sharpness testing.
Okay, hang on. There were a couple other questions.
No, it's probably like a 250.
Would it be a good idea to place in front of... Okay, hang on. Would it be a good idea to put a piece in front of the blade and hold it in place while loosening the clamp mechanism so it doesn't fall forward and out?
No. Yeah, because when I'm loosening it, I'm just turning the loosening nut a quarter turn, maybe less than that. And so it's just releasing a little bit of pressure. And then this is still pretty tight, but it has enough force I can still drive it up and down. So there's no reason for this will not fall out while I'm adjusting it. Now that I've wiggled things into place and there's a little bit of movement in there. It was just like that when when I'd freshly cut it all, so it was still a little bit tight. But no, it's actually really good. So just a quarter turn on this. There's no way the iron is going to fall out, but it's still loose enough that I can move that up and down with the force of the nut.
So Alex says, I've managed to make a groove for iron skewed. Any way to fix it?
A groove for...
I don't know. Alex, you're going to have to clarify.
Yeah,
okay,
sorry.
And then we have a totally off-topic question, but it's a question you like. So James Crandall wants to know, you mentioned space, so do you have a telescope, and which kind? My kids want Celestron. And I'm like, oh, we could be here.
Do I have a telescope? Yes, I had 4 telescopes. I recently sold a couple of them. My main one is a 10-inch reflector, but I do some astrophotography, but it's on a CGM 2 mount. So yeah, it's a nice rig. So yes, I like anything with space. I follow it quite thoroughly. What's next? Do we have a clarification on that?
Yeah, Alex says the one you put the iron in, the square mortise.
Oh, you're saying your square mortise is tilted?
Probably.
In which case, that's not a problem at all. The actual orientation of the iron makes no difference. Yeah. And the nice thing about this one, I was actually thinking about cutting a slot on the back, because I could. I'm actually going to see if I can do that on this one, because I can turn this all around. No, I wouldn't be able to because the nuts are on there. Because I was trying to think of being able to create a way to put the nut on the back, on the outside here, so there'd be nothing around it. Because a lot of routers, like the old, the Stanley, you can actually put the iron on the back of it, so you can get into tight corners. Let me show you that. So you can take this off, let that fall out, and then I can turn this around, put that up in there, and I can put my router iron, sticking off the back like this. And that way I can get right up into tight corners and edges. And so there aren't a lot of applications for it, but every now and then are. Some other planes actually have other locations, so you can put it out here on the end, and those are great for being able to do the tenons. Also, you can, even with the square or the diamond shape, you can also rotate the iron. So if for some reason you want it to go off to the side like that, you can do that as well. So there's lots of different orientations for them. Now I'm going to grab it next time and be like, why did I set it up like that? Oops. Oh, did I have it on the wrong one? No, I didn't. Okay, good. What else we got?
I think we have caught up.
Cool. Well, then I think we're going to wrap it up. If I can ever get this on there. I'll get it later. Thank you all for coming. I like these little live ones. They are a lot of fun to play with. If there's something you'd like me to build, or something you'd like us to do in one of the lives, let me know. And we'll be doing more in the future. Also, if you like the live format, we do one every Tuesday on the second channel, and we actually do a build. It's 1 hour long rather than
you were on the wrong
but,
camera angle.
Yeah.
They're just yelling at me now.
Oh, for the router plane? Here, bring that over there. There you go. So you can see how the router hangs off the side like that. Or you can rotate it to be in any orientation you want, on the back or on the inside. So even with the square shaft like I have, you can still rotate it because it's a square shaft. So lots of fun things you can do with router planes. Though there aren't a lot of applications for it, every now and then it's like, ooh, I wish I could do that. And then you look at it and like, oh, I can do that. Cool. Yeah, if you like live, come join us on the second channel every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And we do a live video. Central Standard Time. A lot of times they're just a tool talk and doing demonstrations. Sometimes they're making a joint. Sometimes we're making something. Sometimes we're doing interviews with other people. There's a lot of fun things that go on over there, and it's a good community.
Do you know who you're interviewing next?
Matt Cremona, I think, is next month. Yeah.
That's right. I think you're right.
Be a fun one. Sweet. Yeah, I think I'll do it. So until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye.